Hi, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the 2 for 1 podcast.
Where you get two of us for the price of one.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Becky, and today we're going to talk about the pressures of moving out, relationships, settling down, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so this week I am back in front of my trusty fire, which is actually kind of perfect because this week we're talking all about homes and the process of moving out. So that's our first topic that we're going to talk about today.
So the average age in the UK to move out is about 19 years old, but the average age to buy your first property is about like 31 to 33 years old, which just shows how much more like desirable the private renting market has become over the last like 10 years. So as I mentioned in the introductory episode, I live on my own. I bought my house in September of 2019. I said that in such a weird way. So I lived away at uni, and then I finished uni in September 2018, I think, moved back home. It was a big shock to the system, having lived away for a while. So that's why I kind of like wanted to move out and buy my own place, because personally, I didn't want to rent anywhere. I've got no immediate plans to change my living situation. Potentially, like if I got into a relationship and like started to settle down, then maybe we'd find somewhere bigger than this house, like, you know, prep for family or whatever. But for now, perfect for me. It would be perfect to like add another adult in. That sounds so weird. if I got into a relationship. But yeah, I have no immediate plans to change anything.
So we discussed that the average moving out age was around 19, and like you've just said, you kind of got a taste for what it was like living away from home at university, and then when you came back you kind of decided that, you know, you missed maybe a little bit of your independence, so
yeah,
you wanted to get your own place. Well, I've never had that. I've never had a taste of what life is like outside the confines of this house. So I feel like that's maybe why I haven't moved out. It's like because I don't know what I'm missing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've never tried it. However, I do have plans to move out. So I will be 25 this year, and 25 for me is going to be the year that things get done. So I am going to hopefully move out this year. I know Becky, I've mentioned it to you, but I have started putting some money away. So hopefully, I'm hoping, I mean, I feel like I always say these things and they never happen, but I'm really hoping by Christmas I won't be here full time. If that's all.
Sounded very dramatic.
So that's my plans. Obviously, like I said in my introductory episode as well about myself, I do live with my parents. And as much as I do love living with mum and dad, I think especially through lockdown, I think it's been really nice because, you know, they have kept me company and they have kept me sane. I think I am getting to an age, like I feel like 25. I always said, I don't know why, but I've always thought 25, you're such like an adult at that age. So I feel like I need to be moved out this year. It's just something that I've got stuck in my head and I just need to do. And also, I think, I don't know if I've mentioned this in my introductory episode also, but I have always wanted to live in a city or in an apartment for a year. Just, you know, living the high life a little bit. And I think if I'm going to do that, I want to do it not while I'm still young, because obviously you've got time. However, I'd want to do it on my own before I met someone. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
So I think if I'm going to do it, it's going to be like this coming year. So that's very exciting and something to look forward to. So one of the things that's putting me off moving out is things that we have to consider. For instance, a big one in my mind is the cost of food. Doing the weekly food shop with my mum genuinely gives me anxiety when you see that number after you've put all your food and drink through the checkout. And I don't think I'm on my own because I believe not a lot of people have done a proper food shop before moving out. So when they do move out, it's like a massive shock to them. And I feel like even though I do go to Asda and Tesco and Marks with my mum and do the food shop, it's still something that's like in the back of my mind. So for instance, when I'm budgeting to move out, the food shop is not something I take into account, which I know I really should do, but I'm like rent, water, electricity, all of that, but I don't take the food shop into consideration.
Yeah,
I don't take
it
Wi-Fi
is a big
into
one.
consideration either. I just realised
Oh
that.
no, that is also a big one. There's a lot of things to consider. Yeah, cost of food is a big one, and I don't really get like going to the supermarket on my own, so I'll ask my mum to go with me, and we'll do our like separate shops in the trolleys. But I don't like going to the shop on my own. I don't know why. So it's stuff like that. Like I don't want to do it.
Well, one of my really good friends, when we were growing up, we would always say to each other, like, what we'll do is we'll get a house in like the same area and we'll go to the co-op and do our like food shops together at the same time. We always used to joke about that. We think, oh, we should do it. Like we should go on like a Friday night after work and we'll like do our shopping together. But yeah, she moved away and I think she like goes little now or something. So that's that dream crush.
She ruined that for you.
She ruined that for me.
Yeah. The other big thing to consider is washing, like of clothes and stuff. So I'm quite bad for this. So I'll leave the washing quite a while. It just builds up. And then I'll do like a big wash load. And then I don't actually iron my clothes. My mum always like is confused at. I'll like put it in the dryer, and then as soon as I take it out, I'll just like hang it up so it doesn't crease. And then that tends to just stay somewhere for a while, like on the back of my chairs or something. So you've got to consider all these things, like actually having to do your own laundry.
I mean, like there's no elves, people. Like you have to do your own laundry. Like there's no magic pixie that's going to come out in the middle of the night and start like washing your drawers for you, and then suddenly you'll have all fresh ones.
No. Yeah, I don't think you realise quite how much time it takes as well.
Yeah.
To like actually do like different coloured laundry loads. It's just like stuff you take for granted definitely when you're at home.
Yeah.
If someone else does your work.
For sure. Well, that's another point that we've got, that you do take your family for granted as well. Like not just what they do, but just having them there. Is that something that you've noticed, that like just having someone around, like going to your mum for a chat? Because that's something I really rely on. Like I will always have like a debrief with my mum like about the day, and I always thought like if she's not at home, I could always just like give her a ring if like we live somewhere else. But is that something that you've noticed like a big change in?
Well, I'm trying to cast my mind back to when I moved out at uni, because that's when it like first happened. It is quite a big thing to get used to be honest, especially if you live with other people, like getting used to living with them, because it is like a big culture shock and everyone else lives differently at home as well. So like all your values and the way you do things doesn't necessarily like fit in.
I suppose at uni it's completely different as well, because for instance, if I moved in with someone now, then I would probably have like a choice in who that person was. Whereas at uni, I suppose you're just kind of like thrown together, especially in like the first year. Like you could have someone who's from a completely different background and you don't really have much in common with. And I can imagine that could be quite difficult.
Yeah. I had a bit of issue with my first uni flat, but we'll go into that in next week's episode.
Next week's episode, we'll discuss that, yeah.
I'll go into that more then. But yeah, so obviously my mum was always just like at the other end of the phone. And I think I text her a lot more now, obviously. But like in the day, rather than just like waiting until the evening to catch up or whatever, like I'll speak to her like throughout the day.
No, that's really nice.
And also my brother has moved out as well. And we became a lot closer and got on a lot better when we didn't live together. So there is an element of that. Like I think I get on better with my mum now as well, and my dad to an extent, because I don't live with them and there's not that like pressure of being together all the time. But again, that's personal preference, depending on how you get on. Yeah. But my mum's very protective, so she's like, "What's going on? Who's this? Where are you going?" And I'm just like, oh, "Let me have some privacy." So we get on a lot better now. But my brother in particular, like I could still live at home and my brother had moved out and we just get on much better. But he's just annoying, that's why.
See, I think I've heard a lot of people say this. And I think, well, I like to think that like my relationship with my mum and dad wouldn't change that much because I do have quite a lot of independence. Like, whilst, even though I live at home, this is going to sound really bad, but they almost could forget about me because I'm mainly in this room. Like, and I just take care of myself. Like, I get like a lot of like my own meals. Like, I'm at work all day. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a funny one. But the only thing I think it would improve our situation. So, for instance, because I do live in the confines of this room, basically, I don't really like go downstairs to watch the television because they're always watching it together, and I like to watch different stuff to them. So I feel like if I moved out, I feel like I'd have a bit more like reign over the roost. Like I do very much feel not like a guest because this is my home, but I let them have the TV down. That sounds bad, let them have it, but you know what I mean, like, because I think, oh well, it's their house, I'll go upstairs and watch something. So it's like I always take like the second best to what they want.
Yeah. And I think when you don't live with them, you spend some like more quality time with them. So like when I go round to my parents now for like on a Sunday afternoon, like I'll like chat with them, watch TV with them, go like walk the dog with them. Whereas like when I lived at home, because you're around them so much, even if you don't speak all the time, you wouldn't necessarily like hang out in the kitchen. You'd want to watch your own TV shows. Like my dad watches some rubbish shows, but I'll just sit there and watch it with him, and I don't know why. Like I could easily just go home, but I just sit there and watch. And then like taking the dog out, I'd probably just be like, "You go, I'm busy," or "I can't be bothered," or whatever. But now it's like a quality time activity.
No, I do get that because I have noticed, especially at the moment, like I could literally be like last weekend, for instance, I was in the house all weekend and so was my dad, but I genuinely didn't see him from Friday night time till like Sunday dinner time.
Oh.
And have like a proper conversation with him. I might have like walked past him and be like, "Morning." So I have started to notice that where I've kind of just got used to them being here, and I don't necessarily, because especially at the moment, what is there to talk about?
Well, yeah, there's not much going on.
All day, every day. What more do you want from me? Like, I can only talk so much.
Yeah. And I think when you don't know the ins and outs of what's going on with each other's lives and stuff, there's like then something to talk about when you do talk to them.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So obviously we both want, or well, you already have, but I'm looking to rent in the future. And obviously you've already bought your house. So do you think there's pros and cons to renting and buying? And how do you know which one's the best fit for you?
Yeah, so one of the big things is like the payments every month. So when you rent, you're paying like a monthly fee to someone else to live there, whereas in a house that you own, you like paying off a mortgage or like a loan, because that's what a
Yeah.
mortgage is. Why have I said that? um, so usually a mortgage is slightly cheaper than renting, but you do have to build up like a little pot to start you off as like a deposit for the house, which not everyone has just lying around like a bit of money.
No, yeah. And I think as well, although you do have to have like a deposit for a flat, it's usually like either 3 or 6 months rent in advance.
Yeah.
It's obviously not usually as big as like a house deposit.
No.
I think for me, and because of all things considered, for my personal situation, I think renting initially whilst I'm on my own would kind of be my main option.
Yeah.
Just because I know that renting is often cheaper. So if you were doing it like for like, renting a property would normally come out cheaper than buying a property. I know people refer to it as like dead money because obviously, like you said, with a mortgage, you're sort of putting it into and you're getting something out of it, whereas with renting, you're obviously not getting it back. But for if I was going to do it short term for a year or whatever, I know people do rent long term because there are other benefits that we'll go into. But if I was going to rent short term, it would give me the taste of moving out. But I'd also be able to budget and hopefully put money aside for a mortgage at the same time, even though it wouldn't be as much as living at home. I'd be able to move out, get the taste for it, and then hopefully save for a deposit
Yeah.
slowly, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you mean by it being cheaper though? As in like if you bought a house or a flat and then sold it a year later? Is that what you mean?
So, well, this is what the internet said, but it said, so for instance, if you rented a property, wait, I don't know if this is right, but this is what the internet said. If you rented a property, then the rental payments would be cheaper than the mortgage payments.
No.
Oh. Well, I thought that because surely if you're a landlord, then you'll be paying the mortgage and then you'll want to make a profit on top of that.
Yeah. So I think if your rent doesn't include bills or anything, that
Yeah,
obviously
this is
depends
right.
on.
This is copy and pasted from the internet, and it says monthly payments are often cheaper, and rental payments really change. Like they're usually like fixed, but I know you can get like a fixed rate mortgage.
So what? That's talking about renting is cheaper.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. Because yeah, like you said, there'd be no point investing in property then, would there?
Well,
For
this is what
landlord.
said. This is not my words. I just want to put that out. I did know that.
Yeah, but so if say bills aren't included in the rent, I could charge probably double my mortgage in rent,
Right. Okay.
and then they'd have to pay the bills that I pay anyway on top.
And there's things as well, isn't there? Like you could rent it for a lot more if you like left it the way it was and said it was like fully furnished, as opposed to like taking your furniture like to a new property.
I don't know if there's actually loads of difference in that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because obviously the tenant doesn't get to keep any of the furniture, so
That's true.
I'm not fully sure though.
Okay, well, whilst we brought it up, so investing in property,
Yeah.
obviously investing in property can be quite risky. That's obviously why there's professionals that do it. but there can also be massive payoffs. So obviously if you buy a house and then you keep it for X amount of time and it increases in value, then obviously you can make a large profit back. Like, not to like expose my like parents, but I think they bought this house like 33,000 like 25 years ago, and now it's worth like in the 200,000 range. So obviously, you know, if you keep it, and obviously it's been like done up, we've added things to it. So it is, you know, if you invest in a property and look after it, then there is a lot to be made. Whereas obviously in renting, you're not going to get that. However, you're not going to get the decrease. You're not going to have like a minus equity or negative equity, whatever it's called. So there is a plus and a minus to that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's especially important to include, actually, just because I've learned about a bit about this recently. So if you buy a flat, or an apartment or anything that's in like a leasehold building, and so I heard about something recently where there was like a problem with the building. Not the actual flat, there was a problem with the building, and somebody owned a flat in this building, and that massively like brought down the price of the flat, like the value of the flat. But because there was a problem with the building, the sinkhole fund charge increased, like the management fee that they had to pay. They couldn't afford that, but they couldn't sell the flat because it was in negative equity. So there's things like that do scare me a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So when you buy a house, you buy like, or you own, what's it called?
Freehold.
Like you have a freehold, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if you own it or have it or buy it. I don't know. But yeah, when you buy a flat, then you only have the leasehold. And I'm not really sure on the difference. Like I don't know if you can get leasehold houses.
You can, yeah.
So then someone else owns the land, don't they? Or like the little plot that your house is sat on.
Yeah.
And then you own the actual building itself.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of details, isn't it? But
there is.
So I think a lot of people buy flats for like investment purposes, more than to actually live in.
Yeah.
Obviously, some people do.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think there is a lot of, when I think of renting, I don't know why, I don't know if this is just like because I've looked at renting like a flat or an apartment, but when I think renting, my head just go more like that way than house.
Yeah, like you wouldn't rent a house.
Yeah, but I don't know why that is. That's just like my mind.
Yeah, I think it depends where.
Yeah,
like if you were in like moving to a city, you more like to find a flat. Whereas if you were going to buy in the suburbs, then you buy a house.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of like things like that can go wrong, we've got repairs and maintenance as well. So do you want to take this one, or don't need to?
Sure. I mean, I've had quite a lot of experience both ways because my parents rent their house too. So whenever something goes wrong with like an appliance that's like built in, or like the garden, or anything in the house that's like part of the structure that should be okay, then that does then fall to the landlord to pay for any repairs and stuff. Whereas obviously if you own a house, then you have to make those repairs yourself. Even if you rent it out to someone, you've got to make the repairs. But if you own it, like if one of my walls fell down, obviously no one's going to sort that out for me. I'd have to sort it out. But if you rented here and one of the walls fell down, you'd be like, hello, can you come and sort my wall? So there's definitely an advantage to renting in that part.
So this would probably be for me one of the biggest benefit. Like this would like draw me to rent, and just the fact that you don't have to have a pot of money sat there in case the boiler went, or like you said, a wall fell down or there was a leak. This would this is genuinely what draws me to renting, because I
Yeah.
just think, like, ultimately it's not your responsibility.
Yeah.
But I think
The
that
only
is a
thing,
massive plus.
yeah, the only thing to add is this was like a new house on like a new estate. So everything, like the boiler and the fridge and the dishwasher and all that sort of stuff, is on a warranty for like between 5 and 10 years, I think, depending on what the appliance is. And like the roof has like a 10-year warranty. So if there was a problem with the roof, they've got to come and fix it, because obviously a new house shouldn't go wrong that quickly. So that is one advantage of like buying a newer house, is that they have to fix certain things if it goes wrong, because it shouldn't have done. Whereas if you buy a house that's maybe 40 years old, you kind of, not 40, that's not old, like 200 years old, I don't know, like a Victorian house,
Yeah.
you'd maybe expect there to be more issues.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that does make sense. And I never knew that about like the warranty things, although that does make sense, but I never like considered that.
No, I hadn't either until they were like, you've got warranty on your boiler. I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
great.
And also, I didn't really know much about this either, but I know from other people that I know who have bought new build properties, it's like, even once you've sold, the developers are still kind of around. So if there's any kind of like initial problems, then they will sort it out for you, which is actually really good to know, isn't it? It's not like you wouldn't have that if you just bought like a normal house.
Yeah. And you've got like a snagging period as well, where you sort of like live in the house. I think it's a month, maybe. Right. So you sort of live in it, and then you basically figure out what could be wrong, and then they'll come and fix it, obviously free. So I had an issue, going into all the issues now, I had an issue with my bath. So the seal around the bath to the wall had like come away when I and the water was in the bath, because they obviously hadn't done that when they'd sealed it up. So they'd sealed the bath when it was like high, and then it sinks slightly when you've obviously got weight in it. So then the seal came away. So I didn't know that, obviously. You don't notice that until you use the bath for the first time. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my God, there's a house falling apart. So I was like, Mom, help. And she's like, they just need to reseal it. I was like, oh, okay. But it's stuff like that, like you wouldn't necessarily notice just having a look around, but then you don't have that option when you buy an old house. You've just got to like fix that stuff yourself.
Yeah, no, that is true. So that's almost like a really good mediator kind of point, isn't it? Like you're not completely left on your own.
Yeah,
it's still fully yours. Like that's like a really good, if you're unsure, but you do want to commit and buy a property.
Yeah, like if that happened in a rental property, obviously it would be down to the landlord.
Yeah, wouldn't be anything to do with you. Okay, brilliant. So moving on from that, security is a big one for me. So with renting, the thing that scares me the most is that if I was like really settled somewhere and then the landlord was literally like, I don't know, for instance, I'm moving out of the country, I don't want to manage this property anymore, I want to sell it, and I wasn't in a position to buy it.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you own your own home, you haven't got that fear that someone's gonna like pull like the rug from under your feet.
Yeah.
I do remember, actually, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a documentary on BBC iPlayer. If you haven't watched it, I really suggest that like anybody watches it that's interested in any kind of property. It's called Manktopia, and it is about living in Manchester.
Okay.
So Manchester recently has become like a really desirable place to live. Obviously there's quite a lot going on there now. It's kind of almost considered like a second London. Like there's lots of fashion houses there. There's a lot of like business HQs up this end. So it's become a really desirable place to live. Now even places for like the Salford that are just outside Manchester, there was a woman on it and she'd lived in a property for years. She had young children, and the landlord had basically said, because Manchester's so up and coming, I can basically get more rent. So I don't want you to live here anymore if you can't afford the increase, which she couldn't. So he evicted her and she had to be out within like 21 days or something like that. And she was a single parent, she had 2 young children, and she was just like, what am I supposed to do?
Did she sue him?
Yeah, because he was within his rights, because it was within the tenancy that he only had to give 21 days. Yeah.
But if she's paying the rent that it was agreed,
I think it must have been in the tenancy that he could like review it at any time.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, because she went to the council and they were like, no, this is right, like, and it's not like the first case we've heard, it's like becoming quite a thing. So that would be my worry. Imagine if you'd like lived somewhere for years and it was just like your rent was manageable, and then all of a sudden it became like a really up and coming area, and the landlord was just like, I need more money. Like,
that's awful.
I know. So with security as well, it's like a similar thing, isn't it? They can just change their minds completely. You know, they might not want to manage the property anymore, which is understandable. You know, say you need the money for something else, or you just don't want to manage the property anymore. You know, like the landlord does have a lot of responsibilities, like we've already said, but we haven't really seen it from their point of view. You know.
Yeah.
For instance, if it was my parents, they might be thinking, right, we're getting older now, we don't really want to be doing all this running around, let's just sell it. But then obviously that leaves you in a bit of a bad situation, whereas obviously if you've got your house and you've bought that, you don't really have anyone else to answer to apart from the banks, unless you've bought it outright or you've paid off your mortgage, then you don't really have anyone to answer to.
Yeah. So prime example of the rent landlord situation. So my parents were renting a house, and they were like, I think they were coming up to the end of their tenancy, or they were on like a rolling month by month thing, which tends to happen. And then nobody knows who they are, so I'm not like spilling any personal info, but the landlords basically were getting divorced, so they were going to sell the house, obviously as part of the divorce settlement. And then obviously at the point of sale, then my parents would have to leave and find somewhere else. So their plan originally was to then buy somewhere. Hopefully they don't care about me saying this. Their plan was to buy somewhere, but their plan wasn't to buy something there and then. So then obviously, well, they didn't want people like walking around, like visits, what's it called, viewings. They didn't want viewings while they were still living there, basically. So they made the decision like, we're going to leave now before you put it on the market, and then find somewhere else. So then they had to like go and find another rental property to like tide them over before they buy this house that they want to buy. But it just like put them in a bit of like a sticky situation where they like had to uproot, move again, just for the sake of like, obviously the landlord had their issues going on. And I don't know where I was going with that.
That makes sense.
But like, yeah. So like obviously the landlord had made that decision, and then it affected the house that my parents had lived in for the last like 3 years or something. Which is a bit crazy, to be honest, isn't it? Someone else's decisions have so much bearing on your life.
Definitely.
We're getting very deep in this. It's gonna like no one want to buy or rent ever.
It's giving me a lot to think about, I have to say. From my like it's very hard, because my mum and dad bought this house as their first house and they have never moved, paid it off very early because my dad got made redundant but got another job straight away, but he'd been in that job for years, so paid it off I've been very blessed in that sense. So they've always been very like pro buy-in.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to hear like the other side of it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because there's certain things, like I've said, like with the repairs and things like that, and your property price not going down, that has attracted me to renting. But when, like, not even just my parents, but I'd say my whole family are like, oh no, you need to buy, like, you need to get that security. But is it really secure? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it? Like,
Yeah. The only thing is, like, even though before you were talking about like negative equity, you still have most of the time something
something, yeah.
to take out of it. So say, I'm just going to spout some numbers out. So say you'd put like 10 grand deposit down at
Yeah.
first, for, I don't know, like a 100 grand house. So then your mortgage was like 90,000, and then you've paid it off, some of the mortgage, for about 5 years, let's say. So when you sell it, if the house is only worth 90 grand at that point, then you might have paid off another 10 grand of the mortgage. So you have 20 grand in there, but you've then got an 80 grand mortgage left.
Yeah.
So the 90,000 that your house sells for then obviously has to pay off the mortgage first, and then you want to get your 10 grand back. So even though you've made all these repayments,
yeah,
and you've like lost money, technically you've still got like some money you
no,
put
that
into
makes
it.
sense. Yeah. And is there a thing, so for instance, if I was buying, like, say I owned a 100 grand house, but I was moving to a 200 grand house, and say there was 10,000 pounds left on the first mortgage, can that get transferred over to the second mortgage, so it's like 210,000 pounds? Is that a thing or no? Do we know?
I think, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think you can like transfer your mortgage across and then just like increase it
Yeah.
to what you need it to.
So there are ways to work around it for like different situations, because obviously
Yeah.
not everyone's the same. Not everybody, pays it off in like the first.
Yeah. Because I think that's the thing, is your new mortgage has to pay off your old mortgage
Yeah.
plus your new house. So yeah, your mortgage would probably be like 210.
Yeah. Very interesting. Because of course,
I'm confusing myself now. Like, I'm
oh God,
saying these things that I think are true, and then I'm like, are they true? But yeah, I think that's true. Because obviously I've never bought a second house, so I don't
yeah.
know how that
Well, I was
process
going to
fully
say, like,
works.
my mum and dad have never bought a second house. We've always lived here, like,
Yeah.
so I just don't know.
The other thing with obviously like the big like sort of pressure, I suppose, of like buying a house because it's more secure. But it was a lot easier. I don't want to like shade your parents or anything, but it was a lot easier to buy a house then because they were so much cheaper. But now properties are so expensive. Even like a 2-bedroom attached house is like a lot of money for a first time buyer, and a lot of people don't have that and don't have like the credit score to support a mortgage or anything, so it is like difficult to get onto the property ladder.
100%. And my mum and dad will tell you that they were just like really lucky with this house. So they got this house, when in like the 80s, when there was a big like crash on the market.
Yeah.
They got it then. And the people who they were buying off, there was a bit of a delay because they were like obviously moving to another house. There's like a chain, and they were moving to another house. And mum and dad were moving here, and then the previous owners were moving somewhere else. And there was a delay, and it was when the property prices were going back up again, and they were going up really quickly. So mum and dad had put an offer in on this house when it was low, but because it was quite a big delay on the previous owner getting into their new house and sorting that out, they could have relisted it at a lot more expensive, but were very good about it and didn't.
That is good.
Because they could have easily just said, oh no, we don't want to go through with it just yet, and just relisted either with the same estate agent or somewhere else. But they didn't. They said, we don't need it, like, we're quite happy to go ahead. So they will tell you themselves they were very lucky.
Yeah, that's the thing with like the process of buying a property, is anybody can pull out at any time until the contracts are like fully exchanged. So there's, I can't remember what they're called. So there's like the exchange date, which is when the contracts are exchanged. But then I think it's called the completion
date, yeah.
Completion date. That's when it's like fully signed off. So at any point before the completion, anyone can pull out. Like obviously there's like certain fees and things like that you'd lose.
Yeah.
But like until that day, anything could happen. Yeah. And when people are in a chain, like everything's riding on everyone, and it's kind of scary, to be honest.
It is. Okay, so I don't know how many of us single people have experienced this, or even if you're in a relationship now but you have been single before, the dreaded question at the family gathering, so are you seen anyone yet? I mean, has anyone else experienced this? Because I know I certainly have. It's actually got a name. It's a pressure. Yeah, it's actually got a name. It's like a pressure that you feel when someone asks questions like that. Now, apologies if this is not pronounced correctly, but it's called amateur. You might need to help me out.
Amatonormativity. No. Normativity.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard to say?
I have no idea.
Amatonormativity. That's not a word.
I mean, could we maybe put it on the screen so that people can look it up?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully. Should we Google it and then get them to say?
Oh, yeah.
Get Google to speak.
Anyway, whilst Becky's doing that, I'll just explain a little bit about it. So it's the assumption that everyone desires and should have the ultimate aim to have a romantic relationship with somebody. So that's basically what it means. So it's where questions like, are you seeing anyone yet? Like, what's going on? I have experienced these types of questions, I would say on and off for the past 10 years, from family gatherings, yeah, even like friends that I haven't seen in a while, and the first thing they ask me is, so you seen anyone yet?
See, I ask my friends that, but in like just a goss way, like,
yeah,
like, do you have a boyfriend? Like,
yeah,
tell me everything. I'm not like, are you seeing anyone yet? You've been single a while, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's going on? Like, is there, something going on? Like, why isn't it happening? Like,
yeah.
But without kind of saying that, almost.
Yeah.
So I've experienced it on, like I said, when I see family that I haven't seen in a while, they're like, so are we not like seeing anyone yet? We've not got anyone on the go, no one to introduce us to. And to be honest, in my head, I'm thinking, even if there was, I wouldn't introduce them to you.
I think I've only been asked this once, but it was my grandma, and she was just, I think she was more just trying to like catch up. Yeah. But she was like, I can't remember how she worded it, but it was essentially like, have you got a boyfriend yet? And I was just like, no, don't want one yet.
And then what was her response when you were like, no, I haven't got one, like I don't want one? Do you remember?
Oh, she was just like, okay. I think she was just finding out if I had a boyfriend, because I haven't for a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a good response. I'm usually met with like, oh, that's a shame.
Is it a shame?
But that's what it is. It's like this word that we can't pronounce. That's what it is.
I've got it up. Do you want me to play it?
Go on, play it.
Amatonormativity.
That.
No, so
she's fab.
Should I play it again?
Yeah, play it again.
Amatonormativity.
Amatonormativity. I don't know. I'm not even going to try it again. Anyway,
that's what it is. It's like a negative reaction almost to being single. Like being single is not all bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think we discussed this on our Valentine's episode, where we discussed that, like, compared to some of our previous relationships, we were in such a happier, healthier place than we previously were. So why is that a negative thing?
exactly. And like at the end of the day, we're in our early 20s. Like we don't need to have found the man that we're going to marry. And if anything, you don't want to just like find someone for the sake of it because everyone's pressuring you to do it.
Exactly.
When he's not right for you. Just like take your time. But I think it's worse from older people who don't necessarily understand modern day society in a way.
See, I do agree with that. However, I've experienced it from people our age as well.
Yeah, but are those people in relationships?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know how to word this properly, but I think people who are single in the current society are very happy being single. But the people who've been in relationships from like school or like college or whatever,
yeah,
that's normal for them. So they're like, wait, why are they not settling down like I am?
Yeah.
But then I think because of like our parents and grandparents, like it was normal to settle down like early 20s and then just be together. Whereas I think society's changed slightly, but then there's somehow still that pressure.
Yeah.
And I don't like it's very conflicting, but it's like the people who have settled down early now have like followed the previous generation's footsteps, and then they sort of put the pressure on people who aren't following the same.
Yeah.
But it's like, just because they're doing it doesn't mean you have to. Like,
I mean, I'm going to be honest here. If there's anyone out of anybody that I know that like motivates me and I think like they are goals, it's you.
oh,
because
that's so cute.
You are literally like living the dream, in my opinion. Like you are literally like living on your own, funding your own lifestyle, like not having to depend on anybody else. Like to me, that is goals. Like honestly, like what more do you want? Yeah, we might need people we've got friends who probably like are in like really good relationships and are really happy in that sense. And yeah, that's great. But what you've got is like you are fully independent. Like how many people do you know that could say that?
Yeah. I think the thing is, which is what I've like got something in my eye. My vision keeps going blurry. The thing I've struggled with in the past is I've always gone to somebody else to make me happy. Whereas now, like you said, I'm very independent, and anyone I'm then in a relationship with will just like add to my life rather than me trying to make them complete me, because that's not how it should work. But that's how I've always sort of been in the past. Like, oh, I'll be happy when I get a new boyfriend or whatever. When no, you just need to be happy first, and then the right people will come along. But yeah, like I'm fully happy on my own, and then someone else will add value and make me happier, but just in a different way. I don't know how I've worded that. That's so weird. But
can I just say, I feel like a bit emotional because that's exactly how I feel. Like,
I made you cry.
Like, I actually feel a bit emotional because you've literally everything that's in my head you've just said.
Oh,
like
I mean, that's like the process that I've gone on in the last like year or two. It's just like becoming myself properly, I think. I don't know why this has turned into such like a TED talk, but just becoming who I should be properly, independent, love myself type of thing, and then just, you know, other people can join when they want.
oh,
I should do a speech.
You should.
No.
Have you ever watched this the film How to Be Single?
No. But I feel like that's probably me.
Yeah, you should watch it because at the end she does something that she's always wanted to do, but she does it on her own. And it's like, because at very few points in life we are fully like single, like on our own, doing, but in the sense of that we're doing it for ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I think in previous relationships as well, I've tried to like fix people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that again isn't right. And I would prefer to be single than have like a project. Like,
Yeah. And in my previous relationships, I've always been like, when it gets to the like unhappy stage, I've always thought like, oh, it'll be better when, and it's like that won't happen.
yeah,
Like, oh, it'll be better when we move in together. Like, chances are, if you're already unhappy together, you're not going to be happy spending 24/7 together.
yeah, no, I agree.
And just stuff like that, I was always like looking forward to certain points and thinking, oh, it'll be better when this has happened. I was like, no, that's not going to happen.
This is so weird because literally, like the other weekend, I had a conversation with my mum about this. Like, literally, that until recently, I've never felt happy, like in the present day. It's always been like,
Yeah.
I can't wait for.
Yeah. Me too.
It's very surreal, like listening to someone else like say exactly what you're thinking now. Like, I have to say,
Yeah. The other realization I had, if you're always looking forward to the weekend, you're essentially just like wishing your life away.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. Like, because I did this like my first like year of a job, because you know, like first job, you're not really used to life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can't wait for Friday afternoon or whatever. But it's literally like there's 5 other days, well, including the Friday, there's 5 days in the week that I'm just wishing weren't there to look forward to the weekend for 2 days. And I was just like every week looking forward to the weekend, just wishing these weeks away for the next weekend. And I was just like, that is so bad to think like that, because like, I mean, I sort of had another realization yesterday where I was like, this time next year, I will be turning 25. And that's kind of scary. But like, I don't want to just like wish the next year away and be like, oh, I can't wait till I'm 25 sort of thing. Because it's like, just enjoy how you are now.
I've been thinking a lot about recently, because just going back to what you said before about turning 25. So I don't know, obviously, if our viewers know much about this, but I know Becky does. Since I've met Becky, I've told her that basically I saw a psychic years and years and years ago. She basically told me when I'm 25, everything's going to happen for me. So I've basically pinned everything on turning 25 this year. But what if that doesn't happen? Do you know what I mean? What if
Or
it doesn't
even,
work out?
yeah, like if the stuff she says doesn't happen,
Yeah,
you'll be like, well, why did I wait?
until then.
Yeah.
So
I feel like we're sending like the opposite message of like being happily single because you've got loads of time left, but then also live in the moment. But the point is like, you don't want to be unhappy
no,
for the sake of being in a relationship just because
definitely not.
society tells you to.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think I sometimes think subconsciously, I know it sounds ridiculous, like a psychic told me this has happened, so that's not why I did this. But if I subconsciously like been putting things off because I thought when I'm 25, what I'll do is I'll stay at home because when I'm 25, I'll meet someone and then I'll move out. Do you know what I mean? I've like subconsciously just been putting it off and putting it off.
Yeah, maybe. Because she told you you'd meet your soulmate, didn't she?
Yeah, when I was 25.
Yeah. So have you like not continued certain things? Like, I'm not asking you this as like a rhetorical question, but maybe you haven't followed like certain leads or whatever because you're like, oh, well, I'm not 25 yet, so this can't be true.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know is the honest answer. Like, I think maybe subconsciously it has like stayed with me, and I don't think it would have stayed with me so much except she told me stuff that was going on at the time in my life, and she was like spot on. Like she gave me like details. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't just like I went to someone and she just like plucked this out of thin air. Like she gave me like full on details of stuff that was going on at the time that no one knew about.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't think I could go to a psychic though, because that would creep me out that somebody knows that about me.
Yeah.
Because I've always been a bit like 50-50 about like the spirits and ghosts and stuff. Like I've never experienced it, but I don't think that it doesn't exist because I don't know. I don't want to experience it because that terrifies me. But I don't think, oh, ghosts aren't real type of thing. So like I don't need that solidification that somebody knows something about me because of spirits or something. I think that would scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'd just like rather keep it like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely get that.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely if she knows things about you, then she must know what she's doing. I mean, you'll see next year, won't you?
I will.
If it all falls into place, it's going to creep me out even more.
And yeah, it really creeped me out.
Yeah.
I'll wait and see.
Yeah, we will.
So following on from relationships, obviously, once you get into a relationship, I know from my personal experience, the next pressure is when you're getting married.
Yeah, I've definitely had that before.
Same, unfortunately.
Well, not necessarily directly from people, but you just expect that to be the next step.
And you know,
we're not doing. Sorry.
I was going to say, we're still in our early like 20s, mid 20s. And the average age nowadays for a man is 37 and for a woman it's 35. Is that quite like surprising to you that we've still got like another 10 years?
Well, I actually was listening to a podcast. I don't know why this came up because it's not the kind of podcast we do. But they were talking about this. But is that first tag marriage?
Yeah, that's what it was saying in the UK.
First marriage?
First marriage, yeah.
Then yeah, that surprises me quite a lot. If it was like including people married for the second time and they're like 50 or something, then I'd understand that. But that is quite late.
That is quite late, isn't it? That's what I thought. I was very shocked by that. But I think one of the troubles that we have is that, so in our grandparents' generation, it would have been like, I don't know what your grandparents' situation was, but on my mum's side, my grandparents were like married at 21. You know, it was a lot more normal to get married like really young. Normally it's like your childhood sweetheart.
Yeah.
And then for our parents, it was a bit like a little bit older. And then for us, I feel like we've just kind of been left with no expectations, but a lot of expectations at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, I think my grandma was 23 when she had my uncle.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I'm like, by 23, I'm not having any kids. But like, it was just normal then. And I think even at that time, it was less normal for women to have jobs as well.
Definitely.
So it was literally like the man would go to work and the woman would have children and look after them.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, that it was so recent.
Yeah.
That we were like transitioning out of that mentality. But
definitely.
Yeah. But one thought I just had with the age thing is I think of a lot of people who live in cities, like London especially, they sort of very focused on their career for a long time. Like, I think my boss has a friend that this sort of happened to, or he used to work with someone that happened to, I don't know. But this woman was like living a high life in London, doing really well career-wise, got to like 30 or 35, and she was like, I've not got married, I've not had any children, like, and she wanted to like wind down from work because obviously like a job in London is stressful. But then it was like, what does she do now? So then I don't know if she like got married then, but then that would explain like the people who get married really late. And there's obviously some men that do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think nowadays women do want to be really successful in their career. And unfortunately, as much as we're told that we can have it all, the reality of that is quite a lot different. You know, if you're, even today, I think to be a woman, you have to prove yourself. Therefore, you have to put more hours in at the office. And, you know, you might not have time to go out on a Friday, Saturday night.
Yeah. And I think take shorter maternities as well is kind of expected.
Definitely.
Because unless you want to really like put your career on hold for like a year with maternity leave, and depending on what job you do as well, potentially when you are pregnant, if you can't necessarily do everything you were doing before, so it can really like, is it called stint? I don't think that's the word. Like pause your career basically, when men can literally just sail on through. And it's, although you can take paternity leave now, it is very different. Like your body's not had to go through this like massive thing, and you don't have to like breastfeed and stuff afterwards. Like there's so much more things being a woman trying to have a career, I think. But
I think as well, as you know, as I'm sure it's tough for men, I think it would be very hard for me to be pregnant for 9 months, constantly with and growing like a life inside me, then to have the baby and just be expected to go back to work. I don't think I could do that. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I don't.
No. And people want to spend time with their new baby because it's the most important time when they like develop. I think I don't know what exactly they develop in the first few months, but it is a lot of things, and like you want to be around for that.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I think although you shouldn't do this, subconsciously, I don't know if a lot of employers don't recruit certain ages of women just in case they might get pregnant, because it is a strain for an employer, but you shouldn't be prejudiced.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Like that?
Yeah.
Because like it's essentially the same as like choosing someone based on their race or their age or whatever, just because you're like a young woman who might get pregnant in the next like 5 years.
It's making an assumption, isn't it? And that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it is prejudice.
Yeah.
I agree. And also it's just not a valid reason not to hire someone. If someone's right for the job, nothing else should matter.
Exactly. Because then you would want to support them for when they're right for the job afterwards as well. Exactly. And if they choose to leave after the baby, then you recruit someone else.
Yeah. I mean, it's no different really if a man got the position, stayed for a couple of years and then decided that he wanted to go elsewhere for a promotion. Why is that any different?
Exactly.
It's always going to be a risk with whoever you take on.
Yeah. Or like some men might become a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
If they wanted to. Like if the woman has a really successful career and wants to carry that on, he might want to stay at home with the children instead.
Yeah.
So you just never know what could happen.
No.
But I think people do still make those choices incorrectly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so around 28% of us feel a lot of pressure to have kids. This is around us millennials. And it says that 28% of us feel pressure to have at least one child and to be earning over £27,000 by the time we reach 30 years old, which in my opinion is quite a lot of pressure to think that, you know, I'm not far from 5 years away from that, and I'm quite far away from that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not too far away from that age. Because if you think about it, if you've got one child by the time you're 30, well, that's like 9 months before. That's basically a year before that you need to be pregnant. Do you know what I mean? You need to have met the person that you're gonna have the baby with. That freaks me out a little bit.
I did, you know, in Friends, when she hits 30 and she works out when she's going to have kids and stuff. Yeah. I did that reverse engineering of like when I wanted kids and stuff. And I was like, I need to be in a relationship soon. Oh, that was terrifying. But anyway.
You never know, it could just be around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, traditional expectations suggest that women are only truly happy when they've got a husband and a child to look after. Now,
Well, we're completely opposite of that.
I know. I mean, I completely disagree with that. I do not think that a husband and a child, or a partner and a child, I mean, this research is based over a husband and child, but a partner and a child should define how happy you are.
No, definitely not.
Like we discussed earlier, I think you should be truly happy in yourself and then accept somebody else into your life.
Yeah.
I do not think that traditional value is relevant in today's society, personally.
Yeah.
And you know, today we've discussed this with marriage and stuff as well, and being single, but often single, successful, childless women are made to feel uncomfortable, and I think that's right. I think a lot of people's first question, along with when you're getting married, have you met anyone yet? I think another question is well, when you having kids?
Yeah.
I think when you're in a relationship with a long time with somebody, people do just, that's their go-to question. Not, oh, have you been on any nice holidays? Or what have you accomplished at work? When are you having kids? And I think that's really bad because people don't know what's going on behind closed doors. What if that couple's having fertility issues or trouble with conceiving or is going through IVF?
Yeah, I was just about to say that, like, you can't ask people that, like, they could really, really want a child and be struggling, and you're putting extra, like, stress and pressure on them, making a point of being like, well, why haven't you had a child yet?
Yeah.
It's like, well, they might be trying, or they might not want kids.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's sort of the opposite when you get older.
Yeah.
Not the opposite, but like an older woman. So people might be like, oh, do you have kids? And she's like, no. And people would be like, oh. And like shocked that she's not had kids. And it's like, why is that always, like, that's not everybody's want in life. Like, not everybody wants kids. So it shouldn't really just be an expectation.
No, I agree. It's not everybody's end goal. Not everybody wants that. And I think a lot of people nowadays are very just like open to it. Like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I think nowadays that's a lot of people's approach to it. So going back to what you said about obviously infertility issues and conception issues, I think it's really hard because one of the main causes of that is stress. And then people are putting more stress on by asking. So it's only worsening the situation by asking and pressuring people. You know, if someone hasn't brought it up, I think it's different if someone brings up the conversation, like, oh, I'd really like to have kids, and like a couple of years, obviously then the conversation's open for discussion. But I don't think you should go out of your way. If someone hasn't brought it up, then there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And I think I've mentioned this in previous episodes that some of the like influencers I follow on Instagram have like recently got pregnant and stuff. And they've done like a trying to conceive journey to like show people their journeys, but then they've also sort of put a trigger warning in to say like, if you like, you might not want to watch it if you can't. Like if you are struggling to conceive, because it is a difficult situation for a lot of people, and you might not want to know how easily somebody else has got pregnant, like how fast and stuff, because you're like, why is it not happening to me, like stuff like that. But then I think there's also that thing of like, if someone you know has got pregnant, like if it, I don't know how to word this, but some people might be like, oh, congratulations, whatever, and then turn to the other person and be like, when are you having kids? And like, if they're struggling, like they might be struggling enough that their friend is, or someone in their family has already got pregnant, but then to be pressured by the other family members even more is just like, although it's like a pressure, it's also a very insensitive question, I think, that one,
It
of
is.
asking people about kids.
I don't think I'd ever ask anyone unless they
No.
like brought it to me first, like I said. And I don't think I'd ever like assume that someone's pregnant. I think
No.
a lot of people, I know a lot of people who like ask like, are you pregnant? And I just think, oh,
Yeah.
am I?
Because what if they're not?
Yeah. And I know some like fertility medication can mimic symptoms.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard of that before. So I think it's just like,
Yeah.
it's good to be
I think,
cautious.
yeah, I think the question I always ask people, and I was just thinking of it then, is I always say to people, do you want kids?
Yeah.
Because that is very like black and white, not when are you having them, but do you want them? Because even people with like fertility issues might still want kids. It's a very easy question to answer.
Yeah.
And then you can go into like, oh, like when do you want them? It's like, when do you want them, not when are you doing that?
Having them, yeah.
Because
Definitely.
it's like, when are you having them is definitely a pressure of urgency, saying like, you should be having them, why are you not? Whereas some people want to have kids like later in life and enjoy their 20s. Some people don't.
And also nowadays with modern medicine, like just because you have fertility issues doesn't mean that you will never be able to have kids by a long stretch. So you can still ask somebody, do you want kids? Because obviously they want kids if they're pursuing treatment for it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously they want that. And, you know, doctors will tell you that the rates that a lot of people who didn't think that they had any chance have got children now. Because how many times have you heard like, oh, I was told I couldn't have kids, and then they've got a big family, you know? Once that stress is removed, and people, you know, often say once we stopped trying, then it happened. So
yeah, that's definitely. And I mean, this isn't really like a pressure, but it's more, it's a pressure around pregnancy, but it's sort of more like medical staff. So if you're like slightly overweight or slightly older, you're classed as like high risk, which I think is awful to tell a pregnant mother. Because like I was talking to someone at work the other day who is pregnant, and she said she was like one notch above normal BMI. And every time she goes to the hospital for a scan, they go on at her about being high risk. And like apparently normal pregnancies, you have like your 12-week scan and your 20-week scan. But if you're high risk, then you have like an extra 2 after your 20-week scan, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But there's so much negativity. Like I was quite shocked to hear this, to be honest. There's so much negativity saying you're high risk. And that's just stress that you don't need to put on someone. And the same with like a geriatric pregnancy. I don't know why I keep doing this because that's what it's called. But like, I think that counts like over 30. And that is not old to have children. And you counted as an old mother. And it's, there's that pressure as well. You need to be like a skinny, young, pregnant woman to be classed as normal in the medical profession, and it's just wrong.
Yeah, like I was just about to say, like my mum had me at 35 and she was like classed as a geriatric mother, even though like I know geriatric is like old. I know it's not like a health thing. I know it's like an age thing, but even though her pregnancy was absolutely fine, she was classed at high risk, even though there's people who I know who have had really bad pregnancies and weren't were younger or were thinner. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like it doesn't make sense in that way.
No. And like there's obviously research behind like age and weight and stuff. And I think it's good to point it out, but not every time you go for a scan.
No.
Like you've been told once, that's fine. Like I think losing weight when you're pregnant is probably not a good thing.
No.
Because then your body would be like, whoa, what are you doing?
Definitely.
So like be told once and then leave it. But it's good to know obviously the risks. But once you're pregnant, you're already pregnant. Like you don't need more stress on all the things that could go wrong, and you're just like, I don't like, no. I think that's unnecessary, I think.
And I think in a lot of situations, obviously there's exceptions to the rule where people are really high risk and they need to be extra careful. But I think in the majority of situations, if you're sensible and you're cautious and you listen to your body, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Then you know, it just is what it is, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
You can only do so much.
Yeah. And I think in reverse of that, there's probably a pressure on like younger and thinner, I don't want to say thinner, but like not healthy weight pregnant mothers, that because they're not told necessarily that they're high risk or whatever, if something does go wrong, then it's sort of, I don't know how to word this, but it's more of a pressure of like, oh, well, I must have done something wrong, like in that first 12 weeks or the 12 to 20 weeks or whatever. Like you'd start being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have eaten that, or maybe I shouldn't have done that. And I don't know. I think, no, I don't know if they know, but knowing that there is like high risk people, like you'd sort of put yourself in a different category and be like, oh, well, my pregnancy will be fine then.
Yeah.
And I think it sort of does the opposite for, obviously, if they know that happens, but I've rambled a bit there, but I think I've got my point across.
No, I totally get what you mean. I totally agree. Like, just because you're not placed in a high risk category doesn't mean that if something goes wrong in the pregnancy, that it's your fault, because it's not, you know.
No.
Things can happen completely with no explanation, you know. I'm sure in any medical background, people will tell you that things can just happen. So join us next week episode where we discuss university, apprenticeships, working for yourself or working for someone else.
Yeah, you won't want to miss it, so make sure you click the subscribe button down below and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a brand new video. If you like this video, click the like button and comment down below if you felt any of the pressures we've talked about, or like what stage in life you're at. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.